In news this week, education support for Iraqis fleeing ISIS. 200 years of Wesleyan ministry in Australia. And using talent and trick shots to do good.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hey, welcome to the program, which promises to be a great one this week. I'm particularly looking forward to chatting with Jamie George. He's an accomplished violinist, and his music and ministry has taken him around the world. And I'm guessing, Sibel, that with your more refined musical tastes, you'll particularly enjoy him playing for us in the studio a bit later.
Well, yes, Kent, that will be quite a treat. Also coming up, Trafford Fisher will be offering parents some tips on that question we hope we never have to ask ourselves. Is my child using drugs?
Well, yeah, that would be a tough one. And also a bit of ancient history in the mix today.
Yes, that's right. Gary Webster will be looking at the debate over the biblical character Belshazzar, who some say is more myth than man. But interestingly enough, Kent, Belshazzar is set in Babylon, which is Iraq, which is the scene of our first two stories.
Okay, well, all yours, Sibel.
Thanks, Kent. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, has been working in northern Iraq to help families who have fled from ongoing violence. Out of the 3 million Iraqis who have been displaced by violence so far, 50% of them have fled to the Kurdish-controlled zone. For more than 6 months, ADRA has been helping displaced families by helping restore livelihoods and providing informal education. Volunteer teachers, with the support of local Kurdish authorities, are able to teach small children in an informal school. For each child attending, ADRA provides a nutritious meal as part of the daily program. Meanwhile, Catholic leaders in the Kurdish-controlled region of Iraq are embarked on a much more ambitious plan to establish a university. According to The Tablet, the university is intended to focus on providing higher education for the religious minorities of the region, Christians and Yazidis in particular. The Chaldean Catholic Archbishop of Erbil says establishing the university will send a message to ISIS that the region's Christians are not going to go away. At a global gathering of Catholic university representatives in Melbourne, the Archbishop thanked the Church in Australia for its support, including a $500,000 donation last year. The new university is due to begin classes next month. International human rights groups are raising their concerns about a new law passed by Myanmar's parliament that is likely to make it difficult for individuals to change their religion. According to Mission Network News, the law was the brainchild of the nationalist Buddhist monk movement. From now on, government approval is required for anyone who wants to change their religion. Critics are concerned that the law will mean a long and costly process for anyone who wants to leave Buddhism, particularly if they are choosing to become Muslim or Christian. Myanmar already has tough laws aimed at religious and ethnic minority groups, limiting the size of their families and cracking down on interfaith marriage. In Italy, a nation where 97.9% of the population identifies as Catholic, authorities have agreed to name a central city square in Rome in honour of the Protestant reformer Martin Luther. Even the Vatican, which excommunicated Martin Luther in the year 1521, is in favour of the plan. They say it's in keeping with the ecumenical efforts of the Catholic Church. According to Religion News Service, the decision to name the square after Martin Luther was not an easy one. It took 6 years for local authorities to process. Local press reports say the original request to honour Martin Luther in this way came from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. History is also being remembered in Australia, with celebrations being held in Sydney to mark 200 years from the arrival of the nation's first Methodist minister. After requests from the colony, Methodist leaders in Britain sent the Reverend Samuel Lee, who arrived in New South Wales in 1815 and later travelled to New Zealand as well. Reverend Lee excelled himself as a pastor, sometimes travelling long distances on horseback to visit his flock. he was also known as a man of compassion who reached out to the poor as well as to Indigenous Australians. The 200th anniversary celebrations were held at Sydney's Wesley Centre. Australia's 5-yearly census gives a valuable snapshot into national trends, but a slight change to next year's census form is likely to boost the numbers of Australians who say they have no religion. For the first time, the census form will put the no religion option ahead of the rest rather than at the bottom. Results from other surveys, including the New Zealand census, indicate that listing no religion first can produce an increase of 7 or 8%. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, a number of secularist groups lobbied the Australian Bureau of Statistics to make the change after the last census, which found that 61% of Australians identify as Christians. Amid much pomp and ceremony, Tupou VI has been officially crowned King of Tonga. The proud Polynesian nation, which has never been colonised, welcomed thousands of Tongans and overseas dignitaries to the coronation. As well as observing the indigenous traditions of Tonga, the royal family asked for the nation's churches to be involved in different aspects of the 3-day celebration. The Adventist Church was given charge of the early morning program, prayer, 30 minutes of physical exercise and breakfast. Church leaders said it was a great way to build relationships and a sense of community. Church media producers in Germany say they have a new way to help young adults engage meaningfully with the Bible. This report from Adventist News Network.
I'm gonna die. At least that's what the doctors told me.
How exactly would you like me to help you?
We want millennials to watch the series, become interested in the spiritual issues, and then we direct them to the Bible for answers. We labeled Encounters not a Bible study program, but a Bible reading movement, because it is not the traditional top-down dogmatic instruction, but rather a text-centered interactive process of exploration and discovery.
But don't you believe that God could heal that person?
I believe God can do anything. But I know He doesn't always do it.
But how can you be so sure?
I'm not.
It's the job most of us can only dream about, doing something fun that you love, that makes money for you as well as for others in need. What started with mucking about in the backyard has turned into a YouTube sensation for these 3 young men, with their basketball trick shot videos attracting 30 million views and the advertising revenue to match. According to Eternity News, Scott, Derek and Brett, who all attend the same church in Perth, Western Australia, have been using their profile and earnings to help get children out of poverty through Christian organisation Compassion. And earlier this year, the lads broke the record for the world's highest basketball shot during a visit to Gordon Dam in Tasmania.
Light.
And that's this week's news. Looks like a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Well, it does, Abel, but I have to admit, I mean, how many hours and how many tries did it take those guys, you know, standing at the top of this dam in the middle of a Tasmanian winter, mind you, how long did it take them to get that?
Well, about 5 hours, Kent. But I'm sure that after 6.5 million YouTube views on that video alone, it was well worth it.
You'd really want to hope so, wouldn't you? Hey, stay with us. History in Focus is coming up straight after the break.
The media targets our goals with destructive messages. But is there an alternative? Yes, it's Gigi. Gigi is a great new magazine for teenage girls that uplifts good Christian values. Finally, a way to pass on our values in a way the teenage girls in our life will love. So give a subscription to a teenage girl you love today. Visit gigimagazine.com.au. That's gigimagazine.com.au.
Hi and welcome to History in Focus. I'm Adam Kavanagh, here with Gary Webster from Archaeological Diggings magazine, and today we're going to talk about some very interesting things, I believe, Gary, is that right?
Yep, more rocks, Adam.
More rocks, but rocks with meaning.
These ones are incredible. You've probably heard of Belshazzar.
Belshazzar I've heard of. He came after Nebuchadnezzar.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah. He's mentioned as the next, in the history of Daniel, the story of Daniel. And he's the guy about the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
The writing came during the big feast they were having.
And then that was the end of it.
That was the end of him at the end, So people said, now wait on, this Belshazzar, we've never heard in history of this guy. And so historians said, this is a myth, this is a Bible blunder.
Which is quite an often thing for historians to do, isn't it? Try to disprove the Bible through saying,
Over the years it's happened many times, and each time like this, it's seen to be quite correct, the Bible, that is.
So what proof have we got here that the Bible account is right?
First of all, the Bible says Belshazzar was the last king of the Babylonian Empire.
Yeah.
And historians said, well, hang on, that's not true. It was Nabonidus, and there's lots of writing about him. In fact, this is called the Nabonidus Chronicle and the Nabonidus Cylinder.
Okay, so no reference to...
well, hang on. This, when they read these things, they found, hey, now wait a minute. It actually mentions Belshazzar by name in these tablets. Now, but was he the king? That's another question. But then they discovered, yes, he was, because it mentions on one of these tablets that, listen, this fellow was a co-regent with Nabonidus. Nabonidus was off in a place called Tema, and he left his son Belshazzar in charge of the city of Babylon. Okay. So he was the last king.
Which isn't really an uncommon thing in today's standards, for there to be dual rulership over large kingdoms. Babylon was quite a large region.
So historians realised the Bible was actually correct. And so it was even correct when you think Daniel says, Belshazzar, when Daniel told him what the writing on the wall meant, he said, well, you'll be the third ruler in the kingdom. First Nabonidus, then Belshazzar, then Daniel, you see. So that all came together thanks to these sorts of tablets.
There you go. So it's just one more time where the Bible's proved to be true to account.
Absolutely.
And I guess,
it's not myths and legends.
Yeah, which quite often, actually probably more so today than ever before, people are trying to poke holes in it wherever they can, aren't they?
But this helps us to see that it's factual. I think something else that's very important, Nebuchadnezzar, the one before, he sort of said, God, I need your help, remember?
Yeah.
And that story. But sadly, this guy said, I don't need God, And Daniel said, listen, God holds your life in his hands. Why don't you pay attention, sort of thing? But he didn't.
No, he was too busy feasting and carrying on, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah, well, that's quite often the rich kid, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, Gary. Another faith-affirming rock expedition. Stay tuned with us. We'll be back with more Record in Focus after the break.
Travel back in time to ancient civilizations with Archaeological Diggings digital magazine. This month, Diggings looks at the Shroud of Turin, one of the most studied artifacts in history. But is it really Jesus as claimed? We explore how ancient Egyptians not just adored, but literally worshipped their pets. And we also bring you the latest news from the fascinating world of archaeology. Don't miss an issue. Subscribe online or ask for Archaeological Diggings at your local newsagent.
Today we're talking about a parent's worst nightmare. You suspect your teens are on drugs and you're not sure what to do about it. We're here with our family life educator, Trafford Fisher. Trafford,
hi Monica, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Oftentimes parents who have their kids on drugs, they sometimes seem to think it's because they did something wrong, which is not always the case, I'm guessing.
No, I think you're right. But it's easy to think that from the parent's perspective. Kids might go on drugs for a whole range of reasons. They're simply bored. They want to impress their mates. All the usual things. I can't figure where I fit in, and I need something for me to be somebody. They get in over their heads and they can't get out. A strong sense of loyalty. So there's a whole range of reasons. And I think what the issue, Monica, for parents is their incredible experiences of sadness and disappointment and grief and loss and pain and embarrassment and hurt. Here's their kids, they've worked very hard.
They love them so much.
To raise their kids, they're proud of their kids, and next thing, oh, you're kidding me, my kid's on drugs. And I think that deep sense of, the genuine caring parent's going to have this really overwhelming feeling of I guess, anger, frustration.
So what is it parents can do? Like, for those parents who are watching who do actually have teenage children who are using drugs, what is it they can do about this situation?
Monica, the writings suggest do all you can to love, love, sustain the love.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, but sustain the relationship, because while you can ever sustain the relationship, when the kids are down and they're ready to turn to mum and dad are going to be there for them.
Yeah.
Right? So if they pull away and they need them in crisis, who's going to be there? It's not going to be mum and dad, it's going to be someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might be good, but they need mum and dad. So if mum and dad can stay in there in love, find some strengths for themselves, talk to the children to reassure them of their love. Try and avoid the question why.
Mm-hmm.
Why automatically invokes I've got to give reason here, and they can get lots of fibs and lies, and that tends to what happens with drugs. But talk to reassure, talk to stay connected. Connect with the school, if they're school kids, work with the school and the community, and try and find out who the other parents are and build a network of support with the parents. If they're in a church community, find strength from the church community. Again, see, that's that struggle of, it's embarrassing, but be brave, step out, because you need support just now. And I think decide on your limits. What can you live with as parents in the home?
Okay.
Work through the process as much as you can with the children on that, with their teens, adolescents. This is what we feel this is what we need and require in the home. Let's talk about if that doesn't happen, and have some plans, because that's going to require some plans to move on if the child doesn't measure up. What's next? But it's the key, I think, is to recognise that sense of loss and pain and find support and strength.
Great.
Journey together with others.
Thank you so much, Trafford.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Discover some of these artists from Salter Music. Anna Weatherup.
Get ready for the train to Jordan.
Castles in Air.
Like watchmen wait for the morning light.
Eric and Monique.
You alone are my strength, my refuge.
Sapphire.
Here's love, reach the bottom of the ocean.
No matter what shade of musical taste you have, you might just find something that sings to you. It's all waiting to be discovered at saltermusic.com. Fresh and exciting original Christian music from Salter Music.
Hiya, welcome back. Well, it's sort of landed in my lap. This is pretty exciting, but we've got Jamie George, violinist extraordinaire, in the studio. Thanks for being here, Jamie.
I'm so excited to be here, Kent. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, now you've done about, 10 Australian tours now?
This is about my 10th, give or take, one or two.
That's incredible.
It is always wonderful to come back to Oz and paradise, I think.
And I understand you've got a 25th sort of anniversary DVD floating around that's already 2 years old. So
that's right.
What, 27 years of playing and ministering through music? Does that make you a veteran?
Makes me old, I think is what it does. I feel old sometimes, but at the same time, when you do something you love and you do it for the Lord, it revitalizes you and re-energizes you, so I feel young as well.
Yeah, wow. Now, I'd really like to go, right back to your childhood, because it's a really interesting story. You grew up in Cuba, the beautiful Caribbean island there of Cuba, but obviously troubled politically.
Right.
Now, was your family under particular pressure there, like being a Christian family? Your father was a pastor, is that right?
Being a pastor, he was pretty much singled out. And we experienced, all of us, especially him, persecution and threats. However, a lot of Christians went through that. When you're old enough, to go through the military service. It was mandatory, it was compulsory, so everybody had to go. Imagine what it was like. Some young people chose not to bear arms, and that caused all kinds of problems. When you went to school as a child, every student wore a uniform, and every student wore a scarf. And that scarf meant that you were a young communist, a pioneer. So when you're lining up with hundreds of young people every day at the beginning of the school day and you're not wearing your scarf, you're going to be singled out immediately. And so the teachers or the director or the principal would come and say, "Why aren't you wearing your scarf?" "Well, I'm not a communist." "What do you mean you're not a communist? How can you not be a communist?" "Why not?" "Well, because I'm a Christian."
You're Cuban, therefore you're a communist.
Exactly right.
Comes with a package, yeah.
And so it would start, you know, a list of questions that they would ask you. They already knew the answers, but it was just almost like a daily type of interrogation process. Yeah, to harass you.
Wow, but nevertheless, you picked up a violin. It's obviously you took to it, you know, like a duck to water. A bit of a, I guess, what we call a child prodigy. Are you comfortable with that sort of terminology?
I don't know, but I guess we can call it whatever.
But you actually had an opportunity to travel to Russia, was it? To actually learn the violin from the best and brightest, and your career was headed.
Well, that's
in a
what
pretty
they
special
said
place.
anyway.
Yeah.
They gave me an opportunity, a scholarship, to go to Moscow and study at the Moscow Conservatory of Music. The only caveat was I had to renounce my faith in God.
Wow.
And so my parents had taught me in the ways of the Lord. They taught me that it is better to obey God rather than men, as it says in the Bible. So I said, I'm not willing to do that.
Wow.
And they said, well, that's okay, because you're never going to amount to anything anyway. So when he left, I was basically walking away from perhaps the biggest opportunity of my life in many ways.
How old were you at this stage?
9.
9. Wow.
But, you know, in countries where we suffer for our faith, I think we were a lot more ready to respond and a lot more ready to stand up for the Lord than in places where we don't have to face those challenges, you know. Australia, the United States, Canada are countries where you have all kinds of freedoms. You don't really have to be put through that kind of trial by fire, you know. And so to me it was an easy decision because it's what my parents had taught me. At the same time, I trusted that God had something better for me. And sometimes on this earth we tend to define success as money, influence, power. But success for God, I think, is something completely different. Success for Him is allowing Him to use us in the way that He's already planned to glorify Him and further His kingdom.
Yeah, wow.
And so He had something better for my family. We were able to leave Cuba not long after that and go to the U.S., where I had many opportunities to continue to develop the talents that He had given me.
Did you find in the US, I mean, obviously you're out of that sort of situation where there's a lot of, you know, political pressure or persecution on you for your faith, but you're a young boy, a teenager, a lot of peer pressure, trying to fit in desperately. Was that also a challenge to your faith?
In a different way, yes, because I went to a Catholic university and I saw things that I had never seen before. You know, young people went out and they went dancing and they went drinking, and I had never
your
been
family
exposed.
was Seventh-day Adventist, and so quite a different culture. Yeah,
most certainly.
Yeah.
So at that point, then I had to make a decision. You know, am I going to not do these things, or am I going to do what I do because this is what my parents have taught me, or what I've learned in church, or because this is really what I believe in my faith and in my relationship with God? You know, so. Different circumstances, but in the end we still have to make those choices on our own, and hopefully we will make them for God's honor and glory.
Yeah, wow. So you had an opportunity to do just about anything you wanted. You were headed for medical school,
yes.
I understand, but you chose music ministry. Was that a direct call on your life from God, or how did that come about?
It was, because that's why I walked away from medical school. I never wanted the life that I have now of doing music ministry, because I know that it is not easy. I mean, when you take the glamour away from the really well-known artists and musicians that have made it big, music ministry is exactly that. It is a faith journey, basically. And so I just figured the Lord...
Sorry, what do you mean by it being a faith journey?
Well, you don't necessarily have a salary. You don't know where your next paycheck's going to come from. If you have a good concert, you do well. If you don't have a good concert, or you don't get churches inviting you, you're sitting at home. you're not going to be making much of an income.
And if someone asks you, what are you doing this time next year? Yeah, so maybe you don't know.
I don't know, not yet.
Okay.
So you have to allow God to really open the doors, and at the same time you can't just sit around waiting for the phone to ring off the hook. So it's a little bit of a process of doing something that God has given us the ability to do, and then waiting for Him to open up some doors. And this 25th anniversary concert and DVD that we put together has actually opened up some amazing opportunities for us. Somebody saw that and gave it to a few other people, and I had an invitation a couple of years ago to play for the President of the United States.
Wow.
And, you know, other things of that nature. The bottom line is we don't know what God is going to use to reach others for His honor and glory. We just have to be ready.
Wow, that's incredible. And so after meeting the United States, the President of the United States, he's now warming up relationships with Cuba. Was that your doing?
No, even though I would have wanted that to happen a long time ago.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not going to get into the political process, but you know, in many ways it is a good thing to start to open up the doors, because the people of Cuba for more than 60 years have been politically and economically very repressed.
And isolated too.
And isolated for sure.
Yeah.
So when I was there not long ago, I saw things happening and doors opening like I had never seen them before, and I praise the Lord for that. At the same time, God uses difficulty and challenge to get us to come closer to Him.
The refiner's fire, as the Bible puts it. Wow.
We don't often think of God when we're comfortable, when we have our gadgets, we have our iPhones, we have our remote controls and our nice laptop computers. We think of Him when the car breaks down, or we're in the middle of nowhere and we can't phone somebody to come and get us, you know. So God can still work some amazing things in those places, and maybe that's why He allows some countries or situations to drag on for longer, so that people can come to depend on Him and not themselves.
Wow. Look, I was going to ask you, how do audiences, respond to your ministry and your music, but I think, we can see, really clearly that you have an inspirational story, and I know that, you're moving people all around the world. Would you like to come back just after the break and play something for us, just to finish the program off?
I'd be happy to, yeah.
Thanks so much. That'll be coming up straight after the break.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. That's just part of what makes it all so amazing. And that's why a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job. It helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.